Yes, yes. All right. So StreamYard says we are live and we should be then. So hello everyone. This is Carlos again for another Evolve Talks. And today I'm joined by Inzo Van Zenten. Inzo, I first spoke with him while he was at Tony Chocolonely, and I came across Tony Chocolonely after watching a really cool a Netflix series called Rotten. And then I came across this gentleman who was kind enough to speak with me and some Brazilian friends about profit and purpose. So, Enzo,
Yes,
thanks very much. We are here today to talk about your career and how to create profit. Uh, but profit is important. How to create impact and profit with purpose,
exactly.
right? I think that's the
Exactly.
idea. So, man, this is your stage. I'd love to explore your career. So give us the word. Who are you?
Whoa. Yeah. So my name is Inzo, and I'm not really sure what I am or who I am at the moment, but I'm having a lot of fun in that search. And over the past over the past 20 or 30 years, by now, I've spent my time at several companies that really wanted to show the world that making an impact and having financial success aren't mutually exclusive, aren't
Mhm.
two ends of one spectrum, but they can really energize and synergize each other in the middle of that spectrum. So my career started ages ago as a management consultant, and then I really knew that for me it was important, even as a management consultant, even as an IT consultant, to really bridge the gap between the knowledgeable people that can build stuff. So this was internet hype 1.0, right? People that can build stuff and people that need to use that stuff, that people need to know about the possibilities. But anyway, so uh, I realized that my life wasn't meant to be an IT consultant or a management consultant. And I ran into, well, I first of all took a year off, traveled the globe, and saw what we were doing already back then. And this was, what are we talking about? 2003, 2004. How quickly things were changing in the world. I started reading about it. And then I joined a company called Innocent Drinks. So a small smoothie company from the UK that was really eager to, well, have people have healthy drinks without additives, with just fruit and nothing but fruit. And that really and it was really a very sustainable, fast moving consumer goods company that I joined. I became the country manager in the Benelux, launched the brand in Holland, Belgium, Luxembourg. We were the logistic platform for the rest of Europe. I ran that company for about 4 or 5 years. And then I hit the point that I always have in life when companies grow beyond 150 or 200 people, that the word KPI comes by too often, that processes and procedures become important. And I'm a guy that takes decisions from the gut. So the company kind of outgrows me always. So I left Innocent Drinks and I became an independent. I taught at university and at the University of Applied Sciences in the field of sustainable entrepreneurship. Because I am an entrepreneur, I always believe that the forces that are strong enough to get us back to where we need to be are the same forces that put us where we were, which is entrepreneurship. Right? We need to change the system through an entrepreneurial lens, I think. Anyway, and then um, from the early days, there was this tiny Dutch chocolate company that was launched by a couple of journalists in the Netherlands that saw that something was very wrong with the value chain of cocoa. Right, even today, to give you a little rundown, even today there's still 1 million children working in Western Africa under illegal and very hard circumstances in the cocoa business. And nobody knew this 15 years ago. So these journalists saw this and started reporting about it, and in the end launched their own tiny chocolate brand called Tony's Chocolate. Jumping forward a couple of years, the company was bought first minority share and then the majority share by a good friend of mine with whom I had run Innocent Drinks in the Benelux. And I joined Tony's always as kind of the, how to put this, Carlos, as the the consigliere of the club. So I set up the brand values with the team. We set up the first HR handbook guidelines with the team, and we stole the best that we had from Innocent Drinks and just put that into Tony's Chocolate Only, and started building this tribe from about 6 people to about 25 people. And then when was it? About 7, 8 years ago, Hank Jan, this friend of mine, gave me a call. He said, "Inzo, you want a job?" I said, "No." But he then said, "But I do think I really have that job for you now." I was quite happy being an independent. I like my calendar to be very flexible and free. But Tony's Chocolate Only had, until that day, never spent a single cent on paid media. All they did was share that word of mouth, right? So instead of going through the classical marketing funnel of creating awareness, it was going straight to creating loyalty by really engaging with consumers, by engaging with stakeholders, with the press, with competition even, telling this story of what's happening in the world, right? If you talk about the hardship in the cocoa industry, you cannot put that into 20 seconds in a television ad. You cannot put that in a magazine advertisement. So we chose to really tell that story wherever we could. And that became my role, to travel the globe, telling this story. I also became, for a little stint, head of people and culture within Tony's, because I utterly dislike the word HR, human resources. I really think it's about people and it's about culture.
Yeah.
So, and many companies still today don't see that the company culture and the people within the company are actually the things that create the company, right? And not the products that you make or the services that you deliver. So anyway, and then Tony's grew like a family of rabbits, and it became available in more than 45 countries in the world, offices in London, in Scandinavia, in Germany, in Austria, in New York. COVID came by, and then I saw after COVID companies really in search of true meaning, right? Really searching their own purpose as a company, and often taking a wrong exit there. So there was a pull and a push for me to, after COVID, leave Tony's. They were doing fine. They could do their stuff without me. And I needed to broaden my horizon to really help companies make the right decisions when they are searching to fill in their search for meaning in this world. So that, in a nutshell, my friend, is more or less what my last 32 years have consisted of. I'm a father of 2 and a husband of 1, and that is my personal situation.
That's amazing, man. Thanks for sharing. I know part of your personal life when I see you on Instagram, and I have the honor of being your friend on Instagram. I can see some of the stuff that you do. Sometimes skate. What do you call ice skating? You're pretty good at it. I tell you that I suck at it. Now, you're talking about something very interesting, and I really like Seth Godin's way of thinking, and what you're sharing is very much in line with what he talks about, which is building a tribe, building culture, right? And that's really what I'm trying to do as well with Evolve. Because if we go back to my world, and if you go back to, I've always been, I'm a foreigner. I'm from Brazil, based in Denmark, been here for 10 years, and been helping companies for some reason in the e-com space to enter new markets. And so vendors, they have that idea that is all about KPIs and all of that bullshit. When I know international expansion, it comes down to having a cool relationship with Inzo, which is like a non-obvious connection that can help me eventually get into the market, introduce me to some people. So it's about people, and
Yeah,
get people to understand that is, especially at the highest level, it's very hard. So I would love if you can tell me what, if you can share, if we can talk about your process on building culture. How do
yeah,
you get started? Because you've been doing this for 32 years, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
or 30
yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a very old
And
guy.
yeah, no, quite young, quite young. So how you been doing that, man? I'd
Yeah,
love to to get
I think
yeah.
I think um, one of the hardest things Yet, one of the most important things when building your company is indeed focusing on what kind of culture do I want to grow within this company.
Hmm.
The problem with amazing company cultures often is that once you that I believe culture is like the invisible glue between the entities within a company that makes sure that the company itself is more than the total sum of the individuals. But once you start describing that culture, it becomes it loses the magic of the invisibility. So it's
Hmm.
very hard always to put culture into words, let alone targets, processes, or KPIs.
Hmm.
But in the end, it all boils down to what and who do we want to be as a company. I just had a discussion with the guy outside here on the terrace that I used to I used to spend my days helping companies create their core values, right? Their brand values. And after a certain while, I started drifting away from that because I felt that there was a higher layer, and we used to call that a mission or a vision, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden we started calling that a purpose. And I believe in a couple of years' time, probably purpose will have to be ingrained in your mission and vision, right? It's not a separate thing anymore. But now I'm back again at believing that if you want to create that higher vision, if you want to have that higher meaning in life as a company and as an individual, it does really help if you have a very clear compass of your core values and how people need to behave within that company culture. So then you need to start describing those. But if they are hollow phrases, then it's worthless to go through this process. If you don't live up to your core values, it doesn't have any value at all. So in the end, it's about what kind of behavior do I want from individuals within my company that create that culture? Because in the end, the people within your company create the culture, and the culture within your company creates the people. So it's a continuous process. It's a continuum of the two. Uh, and how do you start this? Well, I think it's easier for small companies to start doing it right than for big companies to change it. But that doesn't let you off the hook of acknowledging the importance of your company culture. Look at the moment where we're at. I mean, worldwide, we have a staffing crisis, right? Even
Hmm.
though I don't really believe there is a staffing crisis, I think we are blowing up the economy to such proportions that we're over demanding from the economy that and we can't deliver from humanity anyway. So, but if I look at impressive companies around me, they don't have a staffing crisis,
Hmm.
right? If you realize that if you look at the latest reports um, worldwide, only around 10% of the people at work are really engaged with their jobs, right? Are really engaged at what they're doing. There's more people that are actively disengaged than people that are engaged. And if you bring up the engagement levels within your company, if people feel that what they do has a sense of meaning, if people feel understood and feel heard within your company, the engagement level goes up and everything goes up, right? The way you want to embrace sustainability goes up, the sales goes up, finance goes up, marketing effort goes up. So, and that's all down to building an amazing company culture. Is that easy? No. Do you need to start doing it anywhere? Yes. Is it a continuous process? Definitely. It's not something you put in place, just like brand values isn't something you put in place and then forget about it. It's a continuous process of focusing on who do we want to be, who do we want to become as people, as a company, and frankly, as a society overall at this moment.
I completely agree. I think one of the services that we offer at Evolve, and I think it's completely in line, and that's the challenge that I have, for example, is to get leadership to. This is one of the things is we call it thought leadership. So basically, is to help founders have a stronger uh, brand presence on LinkedIn. So because I believe you cannot make a thought leader, but you can download their brain because founders they are the ones who created the company. They understand the product, they understand the service, they understand the industry challenges, and they created the company for some reason.
Yeah.
when they started the company, they probably had an idea like that inception idea where they said, okay, they left the company, they were probably frustrated, and so they created something, but then they don't communicate that vision. And we're talking here about social media. We all talk about social selling and all of that, but if your employees are not seeing you as the company founder, uh, sharing your perspective, a bit of your life. I'm not saying you have to share all your private stuff, but a bit, sharing your thoughts, sharing, challenging as well, the industry in some way, like the folks and you used to do at Tony Chocolonely. It gets really hard also for me as an employee to say, why should I be engaged in this,
Yeah.
social,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
my leader doesn't eat the dog food,
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
do what he's
Yeah.
preaching. So
Yeah, I think
so
leaders very often underestimate their own importance of living the brand in the way they expect their employees to live the
correct.
brand, right?
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
If you ask your employees to come to work on their bicycles for sustainability reasons, and you then drive in with your BMW X5, you kind of lose the point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Hmm. Yeah, so having some common sense there. So do you still see that? I mean, tell me about it, your day to day and your ideal clients. Then, what's your what are they doing? What the companies that you're talking about? Because I'm sure you're approached by a number of companies today, either to or for engagement, speaking engagements, also, or to help them build culture. But tell me
Yeah.
about them and how things are evolving in that sense. What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, honestly, last year when I quit Tony's in January, I wanted to take a severe sabbatical and go kite surfing, read up on all the books that I had stacked up in the last 10 years that I never got around to. But then we also got out of the lockdown,
Mhm.
and all the conferences and all the companies had their days again. So I had so many opportunities to speak there that I decided I was going to start to microdose my sabbatical. So I'm still not at the normal working level yet. I'm still microdosing my sabbatical left and right wherever I can. Um, so I'm not really sure what my normal level of working is. But anyway, I have done a couple of projects and a lot of speaking gigs since last year, and those are separate things. So first of all, the speaking gigs that I do are a lot about indeed people and culture, right? Not HR, but people and culture, and the value of people and culture, the value of creativity, the value of true diversity and inclusion, and then, I mean, also embracing those people that have different ideas within your company and how they add up to your company culture. So I speak a lot about impact entrepreneurship. Often, and obviously, people still want to hear a lot about the things that we did at Innocent Drinks and at Tony's Chocolate Only as well. So, and then we really get to the point that you also opened up with, that I try to explain to people that being sustainable, to having an impact, isn't mutually exclusive from being financially successful. I think those two things need to go hand in hand, right? If you're not financially successful, you can't really make a big impact. But if you're very impactful, consumers see that and like that in 2023 and start buying your brand, right? And then that grows your financial success as well. So that is the speaking stuff that I do, and then I've done some consulting for, well, a big, not to be named beer brewer, for example, a global beer brewer, where we look at the sustainability initiatives that they have.
Are they Dutch?
But
No,
no,
I'm
they're
kidding.
actually they're not the big Dutch one. They're the other one.
All
Um,
right.
but I've also worked with the Dutch one.
All
But
right.
this one, for example, I worked together with a former Extinction Rebellion activist, a former
Mhm.
brand and advertising guru, and we worked together on creating. Um, I would say maybe you could call it, but that's a bit of a consultancy term, but a bit of a toolkit, so that brand managers of the individual brands of this beer brewer could actually understand what they were working towards, right? Instead of big spreadsheets with 100 pages and tables of sustainability initiatives, what is it that what are we doing, right? How are we engaging consumers? How are we engaging farmers? How are we engaging local communities? And why would they care, right? Because so
Mhm.
often when we talk about the holy grail of purpose, right? This is where brands start to slap their own shoulders and say, we are amazing at reducing ocean plastics, and we are working towards 2030 zero strategy. But consumers don't really care, right? What consumers
Mhm.
want is their own lives to be more loving, more empathetic, more inclusive, more relaxed, more beautiful, more sustainable. So, so the purpose of companies isn't about the purpose of the companies. The purpose of companies, in my opinion, is how to serve the search for meaning of your stakeholders, and that's
Mhm.
also your employees. It's your suppliers. It's the farmers that you work with. It's your consumers. It's everybody around you. So instead of looking at yourself when you talk about purpose, it's about looking around you and how can you serve others. And that, in a nutshell, is what I'm trying to get abroad to across to companies, because we need to. I think we've all started jumping on the bandwagon of sustainability, and then we jumped to the bandwagon of purpose. Now we need to look at the post growth economy, and we need to look at the post purpose side of marketing and doing business. And that is
And so how
that is
did
what I'm doing
yeah,
my days with.
yeah, nice. And how did you get there? I mean, why was it your father who motivated you, or your mom, or to get? Were you an activist when you were young? Well,
No,
were you?
I've just always been very I've been, you may have noticed, highly energetic. So that gives me,
Yeah.
and I would almost say business applicable ADD, and that makes me very curious. And I had a great a podcast a year ago with somebody who said innovation is actually 90% curiosity and 10% anger. And
Mhm.
I kind of believe that, right? And I'm just a highly curious guy. So I always wonder, why are we doing things the way we do? We often, as humans, fall into some kind of routine and don't think about why we are in that routine anymore. Right. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense if you take a step back and look at it again. So the only thing I do in life, and what I've been doing over the last 25 years, also for customers of mine, is not diving into their business, right? Because then often you lose sight of what's happening left and right of you, but just taking a fresh look at how they do things and why they do things, and question that, right? And then so that is how I got to this as well. I will never forget my whole journey of sustainability, Carlos, started when I had that year off after my management consultancy first stint in my career. I took a sabbatical and I traveled the globe, and I was scuba diving somewhere, and I was surrounded by millions of fish, millions, and I'd never seen that in my life. And I started reading a book called The End of the Line by Charles Clover about how we're emptying the oceans. And he kind of describes his opening in the book. He kind of describes, or he uses a metaphor, an analogy. I don't know how to say that in English. He said, imagine you're on the savannas of Africa, and you want to catch one specific animal. And what you do, you put two trucks on that savannah with 1 mile between them and a steel cable. And you start driving 150 kilometers a mile over the savannah of Africa, and you cut down trees with your cable, and you kill animals, and you kill zebras hunting that one specific animal. And that is how we're fishing the ocean too, right? We're depleting the ocean. So I read that book and I was amazed. I was like, Jesus, is that really how we're doing things? And
Mhm.
then I started looking at the logic of things on the surface of the planet, and that kind of started my sustainability quest. Just questioning things, and why are we doing things so stupidly? Why are we fishing prawns in Norway, dipping them in the ocean in Holland so we can call them Dutch prawns, and then shipping them to Morocco to have them peeled, and then shipping them back again and putting them in the supermarkets in the Netherlands. It's ridiculous. And we're doing the same thing with cashew nuts. We pick them in Africa, we ship them to Asia to peel them, and then we ship them to Europe instead of having that work done in Africa, etc., etc., Carlos. So the world is filled with ridiculous routines that we fell into as mankind. And my job simply is to take a fresh look at some stuff, question it, and see whether we can do it in a different way. How I got there, I don't know. I've just always been curious in life, and I question stuff in life. And that is kind of, I think, my character got me there. I bet my parents had a big role in that, but someday a therapist will probably tell me that when I'm old and wise and wonder where things came from. But I see the same thing in my kids right now. My daughter is much more of an activist than I am. She's 16
Hmm.
years old. She wants to study anthropology after this, and she questions the world even more than I do.
I still think it's fascinating to explore your uh, your origin story, because I think it tells a lot. When we look at our past, it tells a lot about, the video, like the video from Steve Jobs, when he talks about the past and how he couldn't see the future, but how the past shaped him. And I think it's so true, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
many things in our lives, and um, yeah. Tell me, so you had that management job, right? Because this content is going to inspire a lot of young folks there as well, and so and that was not fulfilling you for some reason, and then you decided to call it the day and to say, okay, I need to do something else with my life.
yeah,
What was
yeah.
that like?
So I studied economics at university, and
Hmm.
then I started working at one of the big five back then consultancy firms, or maybe they were
Yeah.
number six after the big five. But I was Anderson Consulting. Anderson
Hmm.
Consulting became Accenture,
Yeah.
and then we had the the first big e-commerce wave coming up, and I was part of that at Accenture. But you saw the management company becoming an IT consultancy firm, and
Hmm.
then IT consultancy firm becoming a software house, more or less.
Hmm.
And then I saw this shift. Also, I was working for them at the Royal Dutch Airlines (KLM),
Hmm.
and I wasn't working at head office anymore, but I was working at the IT office. And I saw that shift. And what I do in life, and I think, is simply bridge gaps between knowledge that's available somewhere and people that need to be able to apply that knowledge. So whether that's in sustainability, whether that was in IT consultancy, whether that's right now in purpose economics, all I do is bridge gaps between knowledge and applicability. And I saw that I couldn't do that anymore at the consultancy firm.
Hmm.
So I literally, I quit my job. I burned all my gray suits and I started traveling the world. And then I ran into I had the scuba diving moment, epiphany moment in my life. Started reading up, and then I ran into a guy that was number five or six at Innocent Drinks, and they kind of represented everything that I was curious about. Right, I had never worked in fast moving consumer goods. It was a very sustainable company, and also focused on personal health of people. Right, and a very young and energetic company. So that
Hmm.
kind of that I leaped to Innocent Drinks, and then I had the career that I just explained.
That's amazing. What would be your, let's say, tip for? I have two daughters, and I'm divorced and married again. By the way, just married. uh,
Congrats.
Thank you. Thanks. Very happy about it. But what? And my daughters are 10 and 8 years respectively, and they question a lot. The young one,
Yeah.
the youngster, she's just like, why in Portuguese and Danish, and why that, why this, why that. The oldest one as well, but it's easier. Now, what would be your tip for for a father like myself to help their children in life? There are other parents also watching this. Because I don't want to dictate stuff, but I also want
Yeah.
to help them
Interesting
in the
question,
best way I
Carlos.
can.
Interesting question.
Yeah.
I would say, one, nurture that mindset of them, right?
Hmm.
Nurture their curiosity, right? Um, and two, uh, help them truly believe that no one is too small to make a difference. So
Hmm.
their curiosity and their personality matters, right? I think
Hmm.
there was this sign somewhere that said we don't need some people to be perfect or do things perfectly. We need all of us to do things imperfectly, right? We need all of us to pick up the responsibility of changing what we're doing in the world right now. And I love it if kids are curious like this. My advice to my kids has always been work with the ingredients that you have, right? Make the best out of the ingredients that you have. The worst thing you can do is not do anything with your own potential, right? And I'm
Hmm.
not saying I'm not one of those fathers that pushes their kids to become pro soccer players or they need to do this, they need to do that. But
Yeah.
at least do something, right? The worst thing you can do is waste your talent. The worst thing you can do
Hmm.
is waste your curiosity. And I think curiosity gets wasted if you, as a parent, don't answer that question of your daughters when they ask why, right? So
Hmm.
nurture their questioning, nurture their asking why. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Sometimes I just I completely agree with you. I think just sometimes when it's too much, then I have to tell Cecilia, the youngest one. I say I simply don't know. I have to
and
think
that's
about it.
perfect. And
Yeah,
that's
and she's
perfect.
fine.
It's great if
She's
they see
fine.
that daddy doesn't know either, but let's explore together. Let's then find out together.
Hmm.
Huh?
Hmm. Yeah.
I I actually started kite surfing a couple of years ago, and I got
Mm-hmm.
my kids to go kite surfing too. Not because I wanted to go kite surfing, but I live in the middle of Holland, so
Hmm.
wherever I need to go kite surfing, I at least have to drive for about an hour to the coast or
Right.
to a lake. And what my kids in the beginning didn't understand is that I didn't do that to get them to go kite surfing. I did that to be with them in a car for 1 hour, driving there and come back again 1 hour. That gave me the opportunity of talking to them and finding out
Hmm.
how their lives is without them feeling that they're being interviewed or questioned, right? So it's a great way to find out how they think about things. And it's
Hmm.
also, Carlos, let me give you another one. Uh, I've taught at university for about 10 years, and I
Hmm.
really didn't understand my colleagues that would say, the younger generation, they're not interested. Well, no, they're not
Hmm.
interested in what you're saying if you keep talking the way you talked 100 years ago. But if you
Hmm.
listen to a new generation and you understand what their language is, then you can find out stuff that you didn't know yourself. I learned so much from a new generation. I learned so much from students. I think teachers should understand that it's a very mutual relationship. I learn
Hmm.
as much from my students as they learn from my experience in my life, but they teach me
Hmm.
how kids look at things nowadays. I saw that the university in Ghent in Belgium is now using Taylor Swift in their literature course, and I think that's
Hmm.
amazing. It's a great
Of
example,
course.
right, of how you
Yeah.
need to speak a different language. And I think this is also going back to if you talk about staffing crisis,
Hmm.
we need to understand that a new generation have a different perspective on what work is or for them needs to be, right?
Hmm.
Flexibility in working hours, in location, making them count, right? Listening to them. I think we need to speak a different language with a new generation. And as long as you as a parent understand that and nurture your daughters of 8 and 10, you said, right?
Yeah.
Because that is often so pure, the questions that they ask, right? Is
It
often so
is. Yeah.
pure that it makes you think, oh, no, that's a pretty damn good point, my daughter, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and it's always on point. Hey, why are you doing this? And Dad, you can't
yeah,
do this. Dad, you can cross the road when the sign is red. And yeah, you're right.
exactly. Yeah,
What can I
exactly.
say?
Fair
You
point.
know?
Yeah,
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 it's on point.
exactly.
And so amazing, amazing. So we talked about innovation, curiosity. Um, you've been a gap bridger, if you can say that in English. And the other question I would have for you is more like, so you picked rebel companies in a way, and after the management consulting gig, you've had you picked Innocent Drinks, and then you picked Tony Chocolonely, and these companies seems to me that they are rebels, right? And that being a rebel, you said 90% curious, 10% angry. I would say a bit of a rebel there as well. So what would be your advice to pick the right companies for anyone? How would you do that? Because I mean, and I think
That's a
there's a
good
lot of
question, but I
yeah,
wonder whether you need to pick the right company. I think it's about you and your mindset. Let me give you a good
right.
example.
Hmm.
In the last 10 or 15 years, having worked with these rebel companies, people often came to me because they love those companies, right?
Hmm.
One day I had this long talk and a coffee with a lady that was working at an airline, a Dutch airline company. And in the end, she said, I would really, oh no, and what she came to me saying, I would really love to work for such a meaningful company as Tony's. And we had an hour long or 1.5 hour discussion. And in the end, I said, honestly, I don't think you should apply for a job at Tony's. I think
Hmm.
what you should do is stay where you are and make a change where you are within that company because you're such a strong personality, and you have such a search for meaning and such a drive to make a change. Please change that company from within instead of working for a meaningful company where we already have so many people that have the same drive. We need people like you to have that drive at different companies. So but having said that, if people are searching for companies like that, I think they are all around us, Carlos.
Hmm.
I mean, an easy way is to start looking at benefit corporations like B Corps, for example, or but no, let me get back. I think if people have this drive to make a change, by all means do that in your own microcosmos around you. Don't search for companies that would fulfill that need. Use that drive to change companies that need changing.
Mm, interesting. So start with you. Start with yourself.
Yeah, and I, I think people need to acknowledge that they are a force for good themselves, right? And they often look around them or think I'm not senior enough. I have three bosses over me. But if you don't question stuff, nothing's going to change. No one will see that you actually have this in your head. And so I think I'd rather have people speak up where they are and make a change than hoping to find a place that will acknowledge their search for meaning.
No, exactly. I think the point that you're, bringing is so relevant because if I don't know, if I never do soul searching, some kind of soul searching exercise, and for me that came with my divorce in 2019, and that's the reason why I created Evolve, and I believe I'm creating something here, and it takes time, and I'm not in a hurry, but it came from a some kind of rupture in my life where I had to pause and reflect and say, you know, how am I living life, right? And so I started shifting my perspective and maybe increasing my consciousness. Started doing some meditation, transcendental meditation, therapy again, looking inwards and say, okay, this is who I am, and I'll stick to my values. I
Yeah,
cannot not be true to myself, right?
yeah,
And from that it becomes a lot easier to
yeah,
maybe to pick the companies that I want to work with as well, and people that I want to collaborate, if that makes
yeah,
sense, right?
yeah.
um
No, it makes
I like
perfect
to,
sense. So,
yeah,
so what I
yeah.
just said, I said companies slip into a routine of doing things in the way they didn't do things. People do the same, unfortunately. So, if
Hmm.
it indeed, if I were to give these people some advice, it would say just like you and me. Last year, I spent a week sitting on a mountain in Spain for complete self-reflection um, and soul searching. I think it's
Hmm.
very good if you give yourself some time, and that can be on a daily basis, to
Hmm.
step back from the roller coaster, step out of your routines, and look at your own life and what is fulfilling to me, and who do I actually want to be, and what do I want to be in this world? What is my personal true soul purpose on this planet? And
Hmm.
it's not it's that sounds big and that sounds very spiritual, but it can be tiny, right? It just give yourself some time now and then to just reflect on what you're actually doing.
Agreed. So one of the final questions here, Enzo, is when is it that you say no to a company?
It's a very good question. Let me give you a little anecdote. I started working for Tony's Chocolate Only, and I became the brand evangelist, the choco evangelist, the chief evangelist of Tony's. And in one of the early days, I was asked by a supplier of the tobacco industry to speak at one of their conferences. And I spoke to the lady who had been at Tony's the longest from anybody at Tony's, and I said, "Are we actually going to do this?" I was inclined to just say no. And then she said the wise words. She said, "Enzo, anywhere where we can actually make a change, make a difference, inspire companies to do things differently, we need to go there." So I kind of lowered my threshold, my moral threshold of where and who I want to work with. If I feel I can actually make a change, if I'm being used as a pawn uh, for greenwashing for this
Hmm.
company and they don't change a thing, that is where I would definitely say no. But any company, small or big, any client, small or big, where I can actually make a change, small or big, uh, I'm happy to work with them. Um, Obviously, there's some moral thresholds. I need to actually feel I can make a change there. And I would probably not be working that quickly doing the consumer branding of a company that makes landmines, right? But if I were able to change that company uh, of and have them stop building landmines and make them start making children toys, um, probably I would still work with them, right? That would be an impressive change to make in the world.
Hmm. And that's a big question. I'm gonna ask you, and it's my final question. How do you make change?
How do you make change? The easiest answer I can give, Carlos, is by just starting to make change, right? So many people and companies are afraid to change and therefore do not change. I think you need to embrace change, but also keep evaluating whether you're heading the right way. Um, I'm a big fanboy of electric cars, right? I drive an electric car, I drive a Tesla. Um, and then you start realizing, okay, the future of cars, in my opinion, is electric cars. But is the future of mobility cars? No, definitely not. Right. So change is an ongoing process of where you look at stuff and evaluate and think, okay, how can we change this? And number two, Carlos, your question was, how do you make change? I think by never underestimating the power that you have as an individual to make any kind of change. Right. Uh, I always, in my talks for Tony, said, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sharing your room with a mosquito. Right. And I nicked that saying from, I think, people say the Dalai Lama or the founder of a body shop, Anita Roddick, but you're never too small to make a difference. And you need to
Hmm.
start realizing that. And some people are meant to make huge impact in the world. And some people, like me, honestly, are probably meant to make small differences with huge energy, right? So
Hmm.
I'm not meant to make huge differences on this planet. I'm sure of that, but I can do small things with great passion.
I love that. Enzo Van Zenten. Enzo, thank you so much for your time today. It was great to see
A
you again,
pleasure.
man. Now it's great to have you also in the community. If folks want to get in touch and know more about your work? How can they? What's the best way? Oh, all right.
I think through LinkedIn, linkedin.inzo.com. I have such a weird name, Carlos. Fortunately, I think there's only 6 people on the planet that are called Inzo. So if you Google Inzo, YNZO, you already find me probably. And I would really actively invite people to get in touch with me because I love
Mhm.
chats like this with you, but also with other people to talk about how we look at stuff and how I maybe can help people just getting one step further in their search for personal meaning, for company purpose, whatever they're looking for.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, man. It was great to chat today.
Thank you, as always.
All right. So I'm gonna end the broadcast here.